Are your comments going to be controversial in the orthodontic community? Like, do we need to look out based off your commentary?
I think they know that they get compensated well for the amount of effort they put in.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast for doctors by doctors. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Michael Jerkins, and we have our other co-host here, Dr. Ned Palmer. Dr. Palmer, how are you?
I'm well. Good afternoon, Dr. Jerkins.
I think, Ned, that this is continuing the streak of having a different background for every episode that we've recorded. So where do you find yourself now? What is this background?
For our video attendees and participants in this podcast, I wanted to mix it up a little bit. I thought the white door behind you was maybe getting a little bland. So to counteract that, I thought I'd give them a different background every single time.
And I see a map of the United States, and it looks like it has some sort of line drawn from where you're located.
There. Yeah.
Which, tell us where that is.
Detroit, Michigan. So this is my Panacea office, which is in a World War II hangar, converted hangar from when there was a naval air station in the city of Detroit.
Is this true?
Is it 100% true? This is a building from 1934. Yeah.
Does it have asbestos?
I think this predates asbestos. This has like old school, like radon and mercury, like the good stuff, you know?
Even better.
Yeah. None of this new agey polyfiber stuff. We're going old school here. Which there is something as pediatricians, leaded gasoline is still very commonly used in aviation. And so it is still like the standard for gasoline in most small engine, small plane aviation is leaded gasoline. Not great as pediatricians. I think neither you or I are really big on that. But unfortunately, it is the reality still today.
And what's interesting is on my notes here for an intro, I didn't have leaded gasoline as one of the topics, but
you should.
Nonetheless, here we are. Very, very excited about this.
Look, when we talk to Dr. Yip as a pediatric dentist, I want to know what the complications are of lead in dentistry. Yeah.
That's what I was about to say. Hey, we as two physicians that treat children are excited today to talk to a dentist who treats children. I have lots of questions myself as a parent, but also as a pediatrician. Very excited to talk to Dr. Yip about pediatric dentistry, her interesting journey to get where she is today, and also I think hearing her perspective on what's going on today in pediatric oral health. So maybe let's just cut to the interview. What do you think, Ned?
I think let's start with Dr. Yip.
All right, here's our interview with Dr. Judy Yip. Dr. Judy Yip was born and raised in the northern part of sunny California. She obtained her undergraduate degree at UC San Diego and received her DDS at the UCLA School of Dentistry, and then completed her specialty training in pediatric dentistry at Yale School of Medicine. Dr. Judy believes that pediatric oral health involves the entire family and aspires to make each visit a positive environment for all. She also believes in providing high-quality care, especially when it comes to patient education, dental treatment, and patient-provider relationships. When Dr. Judy is not holding a handpiece, you can find her keeping busy with DIY projects, hiking, relaxing at the beach, or playing tennis. Dr. Judy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with y'all.
This is awesome. Maybe just off the cuff at the beginning, just tell us a little bit about your journey becoming a dentist and a pediatric dentist.
Yeah, my road towards dentistry was kind of a windy road. Actually, the first sign of me wanting to become a dentist was when I believe in high school, when I had braces, and I had a great orthodontist. Loved that place, super fun. And I was like, hey, I want to come back and work for you, Dr. Kwan. And then that was my first sign. But then somewhere along the line, I think when I actually entered college, I was like, wait, hold on. I think delivering babies would be fun. So then I kind of switched my first quarter to pre-med. So I was actually pre-med all of undergrad, took the MCAT, was ready to apply. And then I think it was the month of graduation. I was like, wait, I know I took the MCAT and everything, and I'm going to apply, but something doesn't feel right, you know? So then I was, growing up, I had this image of, having a great career and then also having a great family life, like coming home, eating family dinners every day. And I was like, I don't think I can really do that if I want to do like go in the route of OBGYN, you know? So then I was like, wait, hold on. Do I really want to be on call in the middle of the night? So then I just like, it was like out of nowhere one day, I just did a 180 and I'm like, no, I'm not going to apply to medicine. Like, and didn't tell my parents, didn't tell anyone. And I was like, I mean, I was on the track of taking a year off anyway. So I was like, I'm just going to take this gap year to just see what I want to do. And then I think because throughout the 4 years, I was so focused on med school, I forgot about dentistry for a little bit. And then, so during the first couple months, I was just exploring, talking to everyone. I was like, pharmacy, no, I hate OChem. Like, I can't do that. And then, but I knew I wanted to be in healthcare. I was always fascinated with the human body, science I loved, biology I loved. So I was like, something in the realm of healthcare. And then talked to my friend, and she was a dentist practicing in New York. And she's like, you should do dentistry. And I was like, oh yeah, I did have an interest in that. So during my gap year, I actually ended up taking 2 gap years and did a whole bunch of random part-time jobs while I was studying for the DATs and then applying. And then here I am now. I'm in 6 years into private practice. So
That is amazing.
I want to talk a little bit more about that gap year. Like, what did you do to prepare yourself to make such a big change? Because it sounds like you'd really invested almost like 4 years down the medical path. And it's something we hear from people all the time. Like, switching is hard. So, like, what can you talk a little bit more? Like, you did a bunch of random things that helped you feel prepared. Clearly, you were, and clearly, you've been successful. So, I think it's really important to maybe understand that.
yeah, I think like for me during those gap years, I was just obviously my new goal was getting into dental school now. So luckily for me, like in undergrad, all of my biology courses kind of transfer over. So I didn't have to take supplemental like courses at nighttime or anything. So I was pretty on that track anyway. The only thing that I had to do was really sit down, buckle down, and study for the DATs, which I did on the side, And then in the meantime, I had this I'm like, oh my gosh, I just graduated. I have to pay back all these loans. So I kind of want to work to kind of make money too. I just don't want to be like, woo, like, just have the time of my life. So
It sounds nice, but yeah.
I kind of did a mixture of everything. I did part-time jobs so that I can have some income, but then I also, because it was a part-time job, I was able to take time off and kind of just travel, explore, but also had to really buckle down to really study for the DATs. So it was a lot of just navigating, just pivoting. Luckily, like I said, I already had the background, the science background, but I know people who kind of make a 180 in terms of like communications and then science, and they do have to take like night courses, which is
Redo everything.
exactly,
Yeah.
which is a big commitment. Luckily for me, it was just mainly studying for the DATs while I had that gap year.
Gotcha. Well, and what about the transition to pediatric dentistry? Were you similarly conflicted when you got to the end of your dental school? Were you ortho or, orthodontia?
Yeah, I was pretty well. I love working with kids. Like even like ever since I started working at 16, it was like tutoring kids. It's always something to do with kids. So I knew that it would be in the realm of like pediatrics. But going into dental school, in the back of my mind, I knew I wanted to do pediatric dentistry, but I wanted to keep an open mind in case something else piqued my interest. And just nothing really did. So I just kind of followed in that path there.
Well, look, you're talking to two physicians today, so sorry, it must be tough. But like, I want you to talk. Look, dental residencies and fellowships are not the same as medical residencies and fellowships, right? And so, can you explain for our listeners, like many of whom come from the medical side, just what are some of the differences or some of the unique features that you experienced in kind of applying to and getting access to a dental residency?
Right. First of all, I see like residency like for medical school is just crazy to me, and I can say dentistry is nowhere as tough, maybe the oral surgery track, but my experience was amazing. And I can't generalize, but it really depends on the program. But in terms of pediatric residency, it's an additional 2 years after dental school. And for me, it's a mixture, it can go 2 routes. You can find a program that's very didactic, which means they're research heavy. And there's a clinical track, hospital dentistry, which is the route that I went. I wanted to be hands-on. I wanted to feel like I was working already. So I did a hospital-based program, which entails, working in the clinic every day, working with kids, and then there's also the hospital component where you are on call as the dental department of the ED. So we do get calls. And again, based on the program, your call can be really, really heavy or it can be really light. Mine was kind of in the middle. And it also depends on how many residents the program takes. Sometimes there's a school that's really well known that only accepts 2 residents and you're balancing call just between you and your co-resident, which is, if you can imagine, you're on call pretty much every day. For us, we had 6 residents, and I was on call every 6 weeks. So you would take a call for 1 whole week. And our calls weren't bad. Like on a busy week, you would get called maybe once every day. I got really lucky. When I was on call, at most I would get called twice a week. And they weren't too bad. Like, there are a lot of like traumas that happen in the middle of the night, like a broken tooth or something like that. And then we would always have that component of general anesthesia in the OR. That was really fun for me. So, it really depends on the program and what they're kind of focusing on. I found a great program for my needs, and I felt like I was really prepared coming out of it. So I was like ready to jump in there and start practicing.
If you didn't do pediatric dentistry, look, again, 2 pediatricians, you don't have to sell us on kids, but there's also some things that I think we could all talk about. Sometimes challenging working with children. If you weren't going into pediatric dentistry, what would you go into instead?
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and I think the next best thing is probably orthodontics. I look at them and I'm like a little jealous. I'm like, you don't even have to deal with blood. You don't even have to put on gloves to do your job. It's like, it's very aesthetic, and like they don't even get their hands dirty at all. So I think because I gravitate towards the kids, that's like another way I can like orthodontics work with kids.
Are your comments going to be controversial in the orthodontic community? Like, do we need to look out based off your commentary?
Yeah, no, I think they know that they get compensated well for the amount of effort they put in.
All right, fantastic. Good. And then you mentioned your debt, right? And we were talking about undergrad debt, obviously, dental school debt, medical school debt, veterinary school debt, mountains upon mountains at that point. If I can ask, was your residency program one that you were compensated for, or did you have to pay for the residency program? So it's also a big difference between medicine and dentistry.
There's programs where you pay a tuition, but they also pay you, so it kind of like cancels out. I went to a program that was a stipend, they pay you. And that was one thing that also was very important for me when picking residency programs. I didn't want to go into more debt, so it was really important for me to find a program that compensated me for my time, because again, I was looking for a program that kind of was as similar as possible to what I would face in the real world, which is I wanted to feel like, yeah, put me to work and pay me,
And how have you managed now since then? How have you managed through that? Your student debt, are still working through it like we all are? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think I've gotten really incredibly lucky in terms of paying that back. So just to give you a background, I had debt. All of undergrad I took out loans for that. So I got grants and loans. So that I had a chunk of that rolled into my dental school debt. And then residency, I got a stipend. So, during my time, let me try to think there's a lot of grants out there. Like, as you know, public service loan forgiveness programs, like if you worked in an underserved. So similarly to medicine, I believe dentistry, there's a lot of programs. I got lucky with a program. Basically, if you see a percentage of underserved communities, you get up to $300,000 of your loan paid off. And this is over 5 years. Yeah. So, I heard about this and I applied every single year. I think I got it on the second year that I applied. So I am in the track of I'm in my third year. I'm completing my 4th year of that service. So luckily they're paying off a good chunk of my loans.
That's fantastic. And the name of that, is that the National Health Service Corps, or is that a different state-based program?
I don't know if you've heard of Cal Health Cares.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they do medicine as well. They do a lot of pediatricians. Yeah, so
Hmm.
it's through Cal Health Cares. Yeah.
It's through Cal Health Cares. Okay, yeah, it's a great state-based program. Unfortunately, you have to be in California, but for those that are practicing in California, that's a fantastic program that they have.
Yeah, and I always like encourage people to look into like what programs their state offers or like the government offers, just because it's a great way. Like if so, I had already been working in an underserved community, so like I didn't have to change much. It wasn't like I had to find an office that kind of um, like fulfill the requirements. I was already working there, so a lot of the times, a lot of people don't know that these exist. So I've been I'm always an advocate about like finding out what type of service loans your state offers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's so patchy and variable that I think unfortunately, it means there's a lot of research needed to be done. I'm really glad you're able to come down to something like Cal Healthcare's. It changes so much, and frankly, probably changes what your practice type can be then, right? And so, you're able to see more underserved, which is really great. So I know Michael wants to talk to you about your path into.
Well, to me, it's like when we talk to doctors about student debt a lot, it's people are just trying to survive, like either residency or school or their first few years of practice. And so, like, whatever the path of least resistance is what they're going to travel. And sometimes the thought is, well, I don't have time, and plus those programs don't really work anyway. I just don't want to think about it, I'll just pay them. But you're leaving a lot of potential money on the table by just taking a little bit extra time, doing some research. There's plenty of resources online, whether it be state-based or federal-based, or even, frankly, hospital system-based, depending on where they are, where there's really healthy loan forgiveness programs out there for doctors. So that's amazing what you found. I was not familiar with that particular state-based program, but that's incredible.
Yeah, and I always say like talk to your colleagues, talk to people who are just fresh out and see what their situation is, because if you don't talk to people, you'll never find out. Because I found out through a friend, and that's why it's you kind of just want to like pay it forward. If I find out through a friend, I'm going to tell everyone I can about it.
Makes sense. I did want to ask a question before we moved on. As someone who's taken the MCAT and the DAT, I have to ask,
Yes.
which one did you find harder?
Honestly, okay, they're so different because MCAT, it's just the wealth of information that you need to store in your brain to like execute is a lot. But I always talk about the DAT is fun. I guess I know I'm destined for dentistry because I think this part is fun, but there's a part called perceptual ability test. And it's literally puzzles. And they make you look at something and they're like, what's the mirror image of this? Or like they have a folded paper and they punch holes and they're like, what will it look like when you open it up? It's kind of like, when you're little and you made the snowflakes, you fold it up and then you cut it. There was literally a portion of that, on the test. So in terms of material, like the amount of material you have to memorize, I think the MCAT is a little daunting. DAT was a little bit more fun for me, but so much has changed throughout the years. I don't even know if like it's the same anymore when I took it.
Yeah, I was talking to someone recently about the MCAT because this dates me, but they were just testing an essay part of it, and I knew it wasn't graded, so I didn't try at all on it because it wasn't graded, and I think I got like the lowest possible score
Yeah.
on the essay. And I was telling them that, and they're like, oh yeah, they already phased that out. Like I was old enough to where I was there when they were testing it, and the next person I'm talking to says that's already long gone. So maybe the DAT isn't as fun.
I know. I was gonna say I don't even know if that fun part is in there anymore. The PAT part. So who knows?
Did you have to do carvings for the DAT?
No, the carvings are actually it's not part of the DATs, but I heard of carvings for when you're applying to dental school. It's like a manual dexterity portion of their interview. But I don't know if that's phased out either, because when I interviewed, I had no carvings, but I heard about them. So it might have been an old thing that got phased out as well.
Must be dating myself. I remember our last year of undergrad, a lot of the pre-dental students were sitting around. Admittedly, that was also in Canada. So I don't know if maybe they were doing things slightly different or on a slightly different timeline, but Remember everybody sitting there with soap blocks in classes and like actually practicing their carvings. And I was like, what a weird time to pick up a hobby. And they were like, no, it's for dentistry.
Yeah, in dental school, there is a carving aspect. There is a carving, but to get into a school, I don't know if they do that anymore.
Sorry, very dating ourselves. Sorry.
That is fascinating. It does sound way more fun.
Way more active.
We don't do anything with soap. We have to. It's just.
We didn't get any soap blocks at all. It was terrible. Just a lot of questions on physics we'll never use and OChem that nobody will ever use. So
I know, Oakham was horrible.
100%.
yeah.
I actually had to take OChem twice. I'm just gonna throw that out there, guys. I dropped out my first time around because I was gonna get a good grade. Took it again, and I was humble enough to take it a second time, and I'm
Wow.
a little yeah. Isn't that humble of me to brag about how humble I am?
I was an OChem tutor, which makes me, I think, persona non grata on this call with both of you who are very ardent.
Yeah, you were a professional chemist though after undergrad, so that's just a different level.
I was a semi-professional chemist. Yeah, yeah. Couldn't go full pro. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I can't imagine. Yeah, Oakham was not a strong spot for me. I also like dropped out because I thought I was gonna fail a class, took it again. I think I got my lowest score in Oakham. Yeah, not fun.
It is, as they say, the weed out class. But here you are,
Yeah.
successful, alas. I'm curious on just the route of pediatric dentistry, especially. Like, walk us through the typical route. Are people going into private practice? Are they opening up a practice? Are they working in, for the government? Like, walk us through your typical pediatric dentistry career track.
Yeah, so I don't know if you guys know, but right after dental school, you're free to practice dentistry. You know, you can be a general dentist and do every specialty if you're comfortable with that. But yeah, for pediatric dentistry, you are required to take 2 years. Some programs are up to 3 years of specialty training, and after that, you can decide if you want to go to private practice, go into you can teach for a dental school. You can go into there's corporate dentistry. There's a lot of things you can do. Mainly people just right out of pediatric residency, they find a job as an associate at either a private dentist or a corporate office. So that's kind of the route. And then in terms of dentistry, it's a really fascinating career in a sense that you're never full time anywhere. A lot of dentists kind of just do some days here, some days there, and they work at multiple offices. So it's very rare that you have like a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. It's always like, oh, I work some days here and some days there. And the dental community is really, really small. So, if you say like, hey, I work at blah, blah, most of the time everyone knows what office that is.
Interesting. So on the practice ownership piece, obviously we support a lot of practice owners and a lot of pediatric dentists that are practice owners. Is that something emphasized in residency, or walk us through what that's like?
Not at all. Yeah, a major aspect of dentistry is like the people who want to own, there is no education on being like a business person or even being a leader and managing a team. And I have to say, not everyone is cut out to be an owner or a leader. Because I've worked with some people who are just, you can tell when people are like natural born business people or leaders. So there's no training in that aspect. So if you want to become a business owner right out of residency, you really got to find someone to mentor you, and kind of take you under their wings. And it's a lot to manage for one person. So resources like what Panacea offers is amazing. Like, because you don't get that education anywhere at all. So it's kind of like they throw you out, and if you want to open a business, you just kind of have to learn from the ground up.
That's really interesting because I know in the medical side, it's probably even less. I was hoping that especially in a specialty like peds dentistry, where the private practice is very prevalent, they would have a little bit more just baked in to the training on the basics on how to manage a business or, manage any of the financial aspects. But it's kind of a theme, I think, in all of medicine and dentistry and veterinary medicine. It's just not, we don't get that training no matter where it is.
Yeah. And just going like the route of being a business owner versus an associate dentist is such a different world as well. And there's obviously pros and cons. Like for me, I've always been an associate and I don't plan on like opening my own place because I just know myself and I am not a business person at all. What I like value is this like work-life balance that an associateship allows you to have. Like I love going to work and just focusing on the dentistry and I don't have to worry about anything else. When I go home, I don't think about dentistry. I'm just living my life outside of dentistry. But when you're a business owner, you live and breathe. It's almost like your baby, your child. So you have to be present to practice, but you also have to think about the business aspect, and that never ends. Like when you come home, you're looking at the books, you're doing like you're analyzing everything. So you really have to be honest with yourself. Like I said, not everyone is cut out to be a business owner. But some people like you just know that the business, they're dentists, but they love the business aspect, and those people are the ones that really thrive in that. You can't force yourself to be like something that you're not, and like it's a lot to handle if you're not prepared to deal with that stuff.
That's great. And also too, I would imagine some people might not think they're cut out, but then when they kind of get in as an associate and they see like, oh, like I didn't think I could do this, but I'm learning from a mentor, or maybe it's some skill that they've taken on in their group, that we see that a lot too, where they're not sure, so they go the associate route, work for a couple of years, and they say, hey, I think I could do this. But it's great, like you said, to be honest with yourself and say, hey, like, especially right out, if you're not sure, like trying to, work as an associate or in corporate dentistry or something, just to get your feet wet and understand how it works. And then either way, you get to do a really cool job. That's the cool thing about being a doctor. I always remind myself and others of, at the end of the day, no matter the stresses clinically, it is such an honor to be able to care for patients, and a really cool job. Quite frankly,
it really is. And for parents to trust in us, like, to support their kids is an amazing privilege. I do want to make a point. What you said was so, I think it's so important because, yeah, you come out and a lot of people don't realize, wait, I don't like to be told what to do. I want to be able to, dictate like my own plans and have the materials that I want to use, So a lot of my friends also realized after being an associate that I don't want to work for someone. I want to be my own boss, But there's also a funny story where one of my program directors at Yale, or he's the program director, but he was our clinical faculty. He realized that he just didn't like to deal with parents, like at all. So he decided to go to academics just because he didn't like the clinical aspect. He liked teaching. And he didn't want to deal with all the parents. So there's always a way out, and you just kind of have to pivot and see what like fits your personality.
I think we wanted to ask some pediatric dentistry questions, but I'm going to just lead off with this. Is as two pediatricians here, we refer a lot of patients to the pediatric dentist. And that means someone like yourself is on the receiving end of those referrals and may or may not see some mistakes that pediatricians make that you're like, man, why did they say that? Or why didn't they do this? Or they should do this better. Like, what message do you have to pediatricians on what we could do better for pediatric oral health?
I think that was an issue like maybe 10 years ago, but I think it's come a long way. Like, I always refer to, we have AAPD, which is the American Academy of Pediatric Dentistry, and then you guys have I don't know if you use AAP.
AAP, yeah, same, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I like to look between the two to see what pediatricians are recommending, and they're pretty much aligned, A lot of the times, there's not much discrepancy. It's not like you're saying one thing and we're the polar opposite, but I think a lot of the things that we want pediatricians to know is that the earlier you get your children in, the better. I think I've had, I don't know, what are your recommendations on seeing the dentist? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Well, I like to at least before 2, if they can. Once they start having teeth, we're doing, depending on the office, a fluoride varnish if we can. And then educating them on brushing at home and how to apply and how much to use and things like that. In reality, most of my patients aren't seeing a dentist by 1 or 2. They're waiting till closer to school age just for various reasons. But but earlier the better, I think, is the key.
Yeah, that's kind of generally what we recommend as well. So, by their first birthday, 12 months of age, or within 6 months of the first tooth erupting. So that's pretty similar to basically what you said. We just kind of want to, build those habits. A lot of the times with like babies who come in, they're like, what are you going to do with my baby's teeth? But it's really the education and setting habits early that really kind of primes them for success later on.
I think there's also, and leading into my next question, I think there's, in terms of habit setting, I think getting in front of those early is going to help, because bad habits that play out until school age are going to be extra hard to break. And so, are there any widespread myths about children's dental care that you'd like to debunk? To use our platform and say, please stop, or, like this is a TikTok nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's some that drive me nuts, like it's like when I diagnose a cavity and they're like, "Oh, the teeth are going to fall out anyway." And it's just like it just irks me, It's so the myth that, oh, we don't have to do anything with baby teeth because you're just going to lose them. But a lot of people don't realize that you have your baby teeth until you're 12 years old, So if I'm diagnosing a cavity at like 3 years old, that's 9 years that you're going to have that cavity grow and eventually cause some type of dental abscess, So, there is like there's a whole specialty devoted to pediatric dentistry, and if it wasn't important, then it wouldn't exist, So I think there's this.
We just start at adult dentistry. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, children's teeth are very important in terms of function, confidence at school, eating, sleeping. You don't want it to get to a point where it's past the point of no return and they're feeling pain. The moment they feel pain, it's too late. A lot of things I get is like, oh, you have a cavity. Oh, but he doesn't complain about it. Like, just the absence of pain is not like an indication that your child's teeth are okay, and we don't want to wait for pain, because usually pain means some serious treatment. Either an infection is coming or you're going to lose the tooth,
Yeah, no, that would be devastating. I can't imagine. I don't think I've ever heard it. Maybe Michael has. He actually deals way more in the outpatient world. I deal with the inpatient world. But I don't do a ton with pediatric dentistry. I can't imagine hearing the response of like, "Oh, we'll just let it fall out." It's like, it's really not like acceptable for like other areas of healthcare. I don't know if you've heard that, Michael. Have you?
I would love, Ned, to know the last time you talked to a patient about brushing their teeth as a hospitalist. Probably not something you're dealing with.
Oral health is important in the intubated patient to present ventilator-associated pneumonias, but that's talking to the staff about oral health, not necessarily the parents themselves. So
Fair.
So what, talking to parents, you mentioned it, that even, some staff members are talking to parents is an opportunity. Let's say, as three people who deal in pediatrics here, like it's an opportunity, can be a challenge sometimes. Like, what systems or structures do you use to try to communicate with parents, especially if you feel like there might be misalignment or they're not understanding, frankly, your expertise or where you're coming from?
Yeah, that's something I deal with almost every day. It's like you see so many families and patients and parenting styles that everyone parents differently and everyone has a set of their own beliefs. And as a pediatric dentist, it's my job to just educate, not push you towards anything. I just want to educate you. And my biggest thing is I really want to understand where you're coming from. So there a lot of, the big topic nowadays is anti-fluoride. And in terms of the pediatric world and dentistry, fluoride has shown to decrease childhood incidence of cavities, So we know that it is beneficial in that aspect. But holistically, there's other things coming up. So if a parent is uncomfortable with using fluoride, a lot of parents, I feel like, feel shame. They're just like, oh, no, we don't use fluoride. And then they move on to the next topic. But it's my job to be like, oh, why? Like, what are your concerns about fluoride? Because if you're not comfortable with this, let me show you an alternative. I don't want you to just go no fluoride. There's alternatives that you might be okay with that are more in the natural, realm that you might want to use, So I think opening up that discussions of understanding why your patients are refusing certain things and educating them. The most I can do is just educate, and it's up to you. In dentistry, there's this gray area. You go to one dentist, and one dentist will recommend a filling. Another dentist will be more conservative and be like, there's something's happening there, but let's give you a chance to work on your oral hygiene and monitor that. And to one parent, that's like, if there's a cavity, why aren't you filling it? But to another parent, that's like, thank you so much for not going in there. Let's try this approach. So there's no right and wrong in dentistry. So I fully acknowledge that. So for a parent, I always give them options. Is like a powerful thing for parents. It's like, hey, we can do this filling if you don't want to worry about it, but we can also just monitor it, do a really good job of flossing, but know that it can get bigger the next time I see you, and the treatment might change. So it's all about really like understanding the reasons why your patients are like, what their preferences basically.
Totally. And I love what you said at the beginning. It's something we talk about all the time, because Michael makes fun of me because I don't do a lot of any outpatient medicine, but vaccines still do come up, right? So like vaccines and fluoride have been very popular the last, frankly, 4 years, 5 years now. I think actually 5 years now as of just this week. So have been all the talk for everybody all the time. And I really like that model that you describe of peel it back and get to a place of alignment. Like we all agree you want your child to be healthy. So I may have information you don't have, you may have a belief system I don't understand, like, but we're all kind of rallying around this piece of like, we all care that your child is healthy. So what works? If you don't like fluoride in the water, are there natural alternatives? If you don't like this vaccine, is it because there are too many and you want to space them out? Is it, do you have concerns? Like, just what can we do to share and try to meet and come to an agreement in the middle? And I love that model. So
I literally had this happen yesterday of vaccine hesitant parent, specifically like a 13-year-old, and they had been fully vaccinated up till I think 10 or 11 and were due for meningitis, and they had gotten exemption from school, and it was a very good conversation, and it was just asking questions, having some humility, understanding that I don't get everyone's perspective, listening, providing information, just like you said, like my job is to provide information, guide you to recommendations, but ultimately, like, I can't control what you do or what you don't do. And that builds rapport and then allows that person to trust you, and then do a much better job, have a much better patient-centered relationship, which is exactly in line, I think, with what you were talking about. I love that.
Michael,
go ahead, Ned.
Are you getting into the rapid fire?
I wanted to. Can I do it?
Are you ready? You're itching for it. I can see you. I know you.
So we have some true and false so I'll say a statement, and Judy, you will say if you believe it's true or false.
Okay.
Are you ready for this? These are like quick.
Oh gosh. I guess I'm ready.
Okay. First one, pacifiers are the devil for a child's teeth. False. Okay. Halloween is the worst holiday, true or false?
False.
Oh, really? What do you think? Dennis, I thought hated Halloween.
I love it because kids don't show up because they're out trick-or-treating, so I get a little break from seeing patients.
So good for you professionally. Yeah.
But I also have to say, I'm a very unconventional pediatric dentist. I love candy. And I am living proof that you can eat candy and still have good oral health. I'm not saying eat candy every single day, 24 hours, but you can still maintain a good balance. Let me be a prime example of that. Like, just because I'm a dentist doesn't mean I don't, dabble in some candy here and there, I actually love candy.
Okay. I had a dentist who you could trade in your candy for some sort of, yes.
We do that. Yeah, we definitely do that every year. Yeah.
But then you eat the candy, though. Like, that feels like you're then getting the candy. Like,
honestly, Ned, you're not far off from the truth. There's a stack of candy there, and we donate it to the troops. But sometimes when it's afternoon and I had a busy day, I need that afternoon pick-me-up, and maybe I'll reach for that candy that's like 5 feet away from me.
That is awesome. Next true and false is pediatric oral health has been improving over time.
True.
Okay. True or false, the left coast is the best coast.
I had to think about the left coast.
The left coast, yeah. West coast, the kids these days, they call it the left coast.
Is that what they call it nowadays? I had to think about it. I was like, isn't it?
I don't live over there, okay? So I'm just guessing what's cool. Clearly, I'm not.
I think that is true for sure. That's right, Michael. You gave me. I had to think about it. I was like, "Are you saying your coast is better?" I was like, "No, the left is us." I was like, I believe I said that line to you, Michael, before.
You probably did. Maybe I did hear it from you because you are cool and I'm not. So that's how I picked up on that.
Definitely did not come from Michael. That is for sure.
No. The kids tell me this phrase is really neat. I said neat, and I also learned this week what no cap means. So that puts me. Ned doesn't know. See, he doesn't know.
Can you explain that to us? Because I still don't know what that means.
It basically means, and feel free to chime in here, email podcast@panaceafinancial.com if you have issues with this, but it means like lying. So no cap. I eat candy as a dentist, no cap. It means like I'm not lying. I think I'm saying that correctly. I'm not sure. I did check with my 11-year-old son today about my use of it, and I told a horrible joke. I'm just going to tell it on this podcast, okay? And I'm also ashamed to say my kids ate a cereal that has a pirate character on the front. And I said, I feel bad for this person because he's always capping. And that was Captain Crunch.
Oh.
It's terrible. No one laughed.
Yes.
You tried.
I'm ashamed. I did try.
Swung big on that one. Although you did ask Gen Z to email us, which also speaks to like you're just total misalignment. Like, hey, can you guys send me a fax to explain no cap? Like that is so.
Oh, hilarious.
Comment
all right.
below. Yeah.
Please comment below. True or false? Most kids are scared of the dentist.
I would say false, and I have a comment. I think most parents are scared of the dentist. If kids just have zero, like they just come in, it's fun for them. It's the parents that kind of instill that fear that they had when they were children. And that's kind of what pediatric dentistry seeks to change. It's not so much teeth and fixing teeth. It's about kind of harboring that positive relationship with dentistry. And the office I work at, it's kind of like Disneyland. You get a balloon, you get a prize, you get this and that, you get these certificates. And most parents, believe it or not, this misconception of, oh, kids hate the dentist, parents always come to me, they're like, they're so excited to come. It's like it has changed a lot throughout the years. I mean, when I was a child, I didn't even go to a pediatric dentist. I didn't even know that pediatric dentists exist. So if I had the experience that these kids have nowadays, I can see why it's that fear of the dentist is going to change,
And what's interesting is your story started that you loved your orthodontist.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how many people are going to go to your office, love the pediatric dentist, and then now you're like influencing the next generation of...
Yeah, that's the goal,
That's super cool. I will say our pediatric dentist is great here. I was told last time I wasn't there, but my youngest refused to open her mouth and refused to sit on the table. And so I was also told that I have to be the one that goes with them next time. So I apologize. I'm sure you deal with that all the time of kids who are just...
Oh, I've heard that, oh, they do better with their dad, or they do better with their mom, or like, we're going to have grandma bring them in. Like, it's a strategy, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if I'll do much better, but we'll see next time.
We'll check back in.
Yeah.
Find out.
Yes, she was happy she got a prize at least for doing, I'm not sure what.
Sometimes a win is just like sitting in the chair and we're like, okay, cool, that's a win for today. Come back and we'll try a mirror next time, With kids, you kind of have to adapt.
That's a great point. See, Ned and I are half pediatrician, half internist, so we're like pretty optimistic and happy-go-lucky, but then also part of us is like a little cynical. So it's just a good combination of both. You're much happier. Two more questions, the rapid fire. One is, if I had to do it over again, I would choose to be a dentist. True or false?
True.
Next is, keeping a child on bottle feeds is bad for dental development.
For dental development, true.
Okay. What is like your hard and fast? You should absolutely not use a bottle.
So that's hard for me to say because I like to be kind of like flexible with that. It's easy for me to say like cut it off, but at home, it's a different story, you know? So for me, I'm always, okay, you know, bottle feeding, it's even breastfeeding too. It's important for a growing infant, for sure, hands down, you know? But there's things you can do to mitigate the increasing their chances of getting cavities. So you can dilute the milk with water. You can, whatever goes in the bottle, eventually, whatever goes in the bottle should be just pure water, if possible. But if they're drinking milk, you can slowly wean them off by diluting a little bit of water, or if they're completely set with milk in the bottle, at least have a wet cloth on the side to wipe off their teeth. With cavities and like nighttime specifically, like bottle drinking, is when, you know, the milk, when they're laying down, all the milk pools at the front of their teeth, and the longer, and milk is healthy, but it's also it breaks down as a carbohydrate that eats away at the enamel. So it's mostly the duration that the teeth is getting bathed in any type of carbohydrate, whether it's juice, whether it's milk, it doesn't matter like how healthy it is, it breaks down as a carbohydrate. So you just want to prevent it from sitting there for long periods of time. And you know, when you're sleeping specifically, the saliva is not cleansing the teeth off as it should be. You're kind of just, it's just kind of for 12 hours straight, it's just like nothing's happening in the mouth other than the milk sitting there. So that's when your teeth are more exposed to getting cavities.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense, and totally agree. We have one final question we ask every guest that Ned's going to ask. And so we'll close out with this.
What is the most recent thing that you've changed your mind about?
Ooh, recent thing about, in terms of dentistry or in general?
In general, this is an era of people staking very firm positions and not wavering from them. And so we find it important to understand how our guests are changing their mind and what's made them change their mind.
Oh my goodness, let's see.
It's a hard question. It's a legit hard question.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll stick to dentistry, but oil pulling, I don't know if you guys heard about that.
Tell us.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. So there's a practice, you know, everyone's going towards homeopathic. There's not a trend, but in India, I believe it's really popular where they have oil, they pull oil in their mouth and they swish it for about 20 minutes. And it's supposed to help with preventing cavities. And there are studies that, you know, when I used to hear that at home, when I'm practicing, I was like, don't do it. Like, just don't do it, you know? But there's a misconception, I guess. So there's studies that show it's a long tradition in India in preventing cavities. And yes, it does. I believe it kind of changes up the oral flora in your mouth, and it kind of trends towards the better bacteria in your mouth that are less susceptible to getting cavities. So I always say you can incorporate that into your oral hygiene routine, but it's not a complete replacement. And again, you can do a lot of things to prevent cavities, but once you actually have a cavity, which is essentially a hole in your tooth, there's no amount of oil pulling that can take that cavity away. At that point, you gotta intervene, you know, with some type of treatment or restorative option. But you know, now I'm changing my mind. I'm like, hey, go for it if you want to, but it's not a complete replacement, and it doesn't take away cavities. It can prevent cavities if you want to incorporate that. So I'm not like, whenever I hear that, I used to just be like, no, you know. But now it's like, okay, if you want to do that, go for it, you know.
That's fascinating. Thank you. I had not heard of that. It's totally news to me. I like it. I appreciate you changing your mind on that. I think sometimes, obviously, the impression is, you know, those trained in traditional medicine like don't have space for complementary or alternative methods. I generally, in my practice, I find that untrue. I know Michael does too. I'm glad to hear that, you know, like all of us are flexible enough to understand that if it's helping a patient, you know, who cares where it comes from? You know, it does not need to be farmer derived at all. So, yep.
So tell us a little bit, Judy, if people want to find, I didn't talk a lot about your social media, but I don't know if you want to talk about that, and where could people follow you?
Yeah, like as my side hobby, I do dabble in social media content creation where I help educate families on, you know, proper oral hygiene and maybe some dental tips, maybe throw in a little bit of humor here and there. You can find me on Instagram at Dr. Do spelled out DOCTOR period, girlfriend, GIRLFRIEND.
At Dr. Girlfriend on Instagram.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Well, this is great. I've learned a lot personally. It's been very fun.
Yeah, it's been
thank you for taking
amazing.
time in your busy schedule to chat today, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Judy.
I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us this episode, and you can catch the podcast for Doctors by Doctors on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and all the other major podcasting platforms. If you enjoyed this episode or learned anything here today, please take a moment to give us a rating and subscribe so that you don't miss a single episode release. To submit topic suggestions or guest suggestions or questions, you can reach us at podcast@panaceafinancial.com. As always, thanks for listening, and the next time you see a doctor, maybe you should prescribe them this podcast. See you next time.